With soldiers from America and its allies dying daily in Iraq, the images of war and the tragedy of soldiers dying for their country in faraway places is a reminder that this is a dangerous world. On Memorial Day and similar days in virtually every country of the world, there are commemorations of how soldiers give their lives to save their country and live for principles, obeying their leaders to defend freedom. My name is Howard Davis, and welcome to Tomorrow, the program that gives you answers to the most important spiritual issues of our time and of your life. Is there a good reason to remember all the soldiers who have died defending their country? We will be answering several questions on this program about that. First, why does one war seem to lead to another? And also, why are people willing to die for principles that defend a country? And has all that dying been worth it? For those mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and wives and husbands who have lost their heroes, what will happen to these dead people, even good people who died while killing their enemies, who also were doing the same in their own minds toward the other? One of today's biggest spiritual questions for most of humanity that believes in God is this: if there is a good and powerful, all-powerful God, why doesn't God stop wars? Rex Sexton is a pastor of the United Church of God that's going to help us answer all of these issues. Welcome to the program, Rex.
Hello, Howard.
In the United States, people really pride themselves as living in the greatest country in world history, more freedom, more happiness, an opportunity here, and yet wars just seem to be continuous. Ever since you were alive, I've been alive, there have been wars. Our kids now are getting their first taste, many of them, of living in a world in the shadow of war. If we look back in history, just how many American soldiers have died for their country?
Well, if we go back and start adding up the loss of American life in the Revolutionary War, War of 1812, and the Civil War, and of course the big wars afterwards, 1 and 2 especially, it looks like totally until about the time we live now, about 2.6 million men, between 2.5 and 2.6 million, have lost their lives defending this nation and its freedoms. So it's a fairly large number, although many countries in Europe especially have lost far larger numbers of soldiers. But it's still about 2.6 million. Doesn't count the wounded. That's just those that have actually died in combat or died in the service of their country.
Would the Civil War have been the largest?
Civil War, I think about 1.2 million, about 600,000 on each side, give or take, some numbers. But that actually, there were more soldiers died in the Civil War than in all of our other wars put together until the Vietnam War started.
In the European wars, the Asian wars, the Great World Wars, how many total would you say people have died, soldiers have died in fighting for peace?
Well, it's hard to put an exact number on it because some of these battles and conflicts, such as what's going on in the Congo, a lot of the murky parts of the world, Rwanda, over in the area of Cambodia with Pol Pot, about 2 million people died. Most of them were civilians. But in actual numbers of soldiers, in the last 100 years, the 20th century was by far the bloodiest in all of mankind's history, by far the worst. And numbers for that century range up into the 100 million plus, counting World War I, World War II, and then, of course, the wars over in the Far East. So it's been a terrible time. We've not learned lessons. As mankind gets older, we actually are a generation older than our parents. It seems like we haven't learned what causes war or how to stop it.
When Memorial Day was made, what was the background? When was it made and why?
We keep Memorial Day now on a Monday, but that didn't start until 1971 when the Congress passed a law that made Memorial Day a floating holiday. That was on a Monday. Originally, it started in 1868 as a memorial to all the men who died in the Civil War, and it was set aside by General John Logan, who was the commander of the Army at that time. Of course, Ulysses S. Grant was president, and he asked everyone to please go and observe this day in May as the 30th day in May as a memorial for all of the Civil War soldiers. And so people began doing that, putting flowers on the graves, and it became a tradition. Actually, it was called Decoration Day for a long time by most people. I remember my grandparents calling it that because they went and decorated the graves of all of these soldiers who had fallen. And it became a time then later to decorate the graves of all of your relatives.
And then every few decades, more and more of the nation kept it?
Yes, and more states added to it, and before long, after about World War I think it was pretty much a nationwide holiday, although there are some states that were a little bit slower in actually declaring it a holiday than were others. It wasn't really a federal holiday until 1971.
The idea for young people of going and commemorating, having a celebration about dying soldiers or dead soldiers seems to be almost like an opposite. Is it actually a good thing to remember this holiday?